July, whatever it is, 13th, to order. One item of business is we don't have a note taker for today. We have
Actually, you designated me. This is Donna.
Oh, Donna. Okay, great. Great. So we got, I wasn't sure that we had you in here at all, but now we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. So Donna's taking notes. Do we have any members of the public in attendance? Does not appear to be the case.
No.
So I will move on to agenda item 2, the approval of the minutes from June 8th. Do we have any additions, corrections, or comments regarding that? Hearing any, do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
It's moved and approved. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your
Aye.
hand, say aye. Move, approved by unanimous consent. Okay, item 3 on the agenda today is report from the Fire Foundation. Donna, do we have anything from the Fire Foundation?
Yes, we do. So first and foremost, with the fire chief's approval, the firefighters are designing a duty T-shirt to recognize and honor our military, to be used at work during appropriate holidays like Memorial Day and Veterans Day. The Fire Foundation will finance the shirts, which will also sport the foundation logo. So that's the first item. Second is the Fire Foundation will staff a booth at the Friends of China Camp on August 27th from 11 to 3. Please feel free to join us. Third item is new foundation officers were nominated and approved. The board president is now Len Thompson, vice president Pat Kendall, treasurer Jack Devlin, secretary Steve Misrock, and all current board members Jeff and John stay on. And then we are looking to have made a donor window decal that will go in the window of businesses that donate to the foundation. That's being done as we speak. We're still looking at doing a follow-on feed firefighters. That's under review, with possibly doing a bagel delivery, but more to come on that. And last but not least, as the chief knows, we're looking to do future fundraising by virtue of working on a letter to be sent to the local businesses to encourage them to donate to the foundation. So there you have it.
Well, that's quite a report, and an awful lot of good stuff. I'm happy to see the new board appointed, all veterans, and it's in good hands with Len Thompson. It was his idea to begin with, and I think is by and large one of the biggest contributions to come as it did out of the Fire Commission originally, and an excellent idea. Okay, thank you very much for that. I don't have anything from the historic subcommittee, such as it is. We don't really have anybody designated on that. That was something that Steve was working on because he's an amateur historian and a collector of memorabilia. But if anybody would like to volunteer to be that subcommittee, I would be happy to designate them as that. Other than that, I'm going to move right on to commissioners' reports. And as usual, I'll skip to go last. So Nadine.
Oh,
Wow.
I had to really think about this one because I'm sure there's something I'd like to share with everybody, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So I'll stay silent. Thank you.
Okay. Chief, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I just had a question regarding the historian subcommittee. Is it restricted to commissioners, or can the fire chief or someone that I designate provide some historical information?
Absolutely. It's not restricted to the fire commission at all. Steve and I kind of started out with it many years ago. As a matter of fact, that was actually how I started getting dispatched out to fires. It was partly on the basis of creating a historical record. And Chief Gray had mentioned that they had a retired fire captain in Glendale that kept a pager and went out to record fire activity. And I thought, well, gee, I guess I could do that. So I issued myself a pager and started going out to the fires for documentation, really for historical purposes. And then the ICs would come along and say, when could we get those? Because the after action, I could use a few of those. And so one thing led to another, and I chased fire engines for 10 years. So no, we'd be delighted to have a designee from the department. I think that'd be a great idea.
All right. Well, I'll get to work on that. Thank you very much. Glad to hear we can contribute on another manner. That's helpful.
Okay, excellent.
Larry, question.
All right, Stan.
Under the auspice of the historical subcommittee, was that not also the window through which lobby displays were going to happen in the new building?
It was not strictly the fire department historical subcommittee, but once we started talking in earnest about what to do in the way of utilizing the lobby of the new public safety building, both police and fire, of course, wanted space. And a committee was formed. Steve was a member of that, and folks from the police department and what have you. And some of it has been accomplished. One of there were two things that we accomplished in the process. We're getting the old iron spiral staircase from Old 51 and the old apparatus bay doors installed in the lobby. That was as a result of the historical committee's efforts. So absolutely, that's where that led.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Next on the list, Tom.
Nothing from me this month, thanks.
All right. Ken is not here this month, so David, you're up.
Yeah, so Chief, I would say if nobody raised their hand for the historical subcommittee, I'm happy to do it. So just let me know. One question, Larry, was the letter of appreciation. I missed last month's meeting, but did that come up, the letter of appreciation for Steve from the Fire Commission?
It did. It went out. I got a response back from him. He was very appreciative. That was
Awesome.
an item on my list for this meeting, but since you brought it up now, yes, and in fact, I read it to the Fire Commission meeting last time around. So
Okay. Oh, great. Glad to hear it. Okay.
Excellent work, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Other question was, at some point, do you think we can do this meeting face-to-face and maybe at the new Public Safety Center? Just throwing it out there, and want to make sure everybody feels comfortable with it at the right time, but would love to get back to doing it face-to-face if that ever makes sense.
Yeah, I'm all for that too. I would really like to get back to in-person meetings. It's obviously going to be dictated by the county's protocols, county and city's protocols with regard to face-to-face meetings. But we went back to real live city council meetings. Then, of course, in the last couple of weeks, I don't know if anyone saw Dr. Fauci's interview today on CNN, but the BA.5 variant is on the rise. And the advice is to boost, vax and boost and mask if necessary, but don't let your guard down.
Yeah,
So
totally agree.
anyway, okay, I appreciate that. Stan, you got anything you want to chip in with?
I do. I guess several things. In yesterday's IJ Marin Voice, there was an article called Salmon Protection Agreement Hamstrings Fire Safety Efforts. Apparently, the Marin County Planning Commission has a stream ordinance that has to do with property lines, the amount of vegetation, where it is, how many trees, a number of items, which apparently go fly in the face of some of the new rules from or guidelines from MWPA. And I'm wondering if the chief has any comments. This is where politics bumps into politics. From the fire protection and service side, we have a set of guidelines that we're pushing. And another committee that has a different target, in this case, stream and salmon spawning. This comes up before the County Board of Supervisors next Tuesday for a vote. And I'm just saying, what was brought up in the article could hamper what we're trying to accomplish. Chief White, any comment?
I'm not completely familiar with that particular article or the circumstances surrounding that, but what I do know
I'll send it to you.
historically is that the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, has stringent requirements that any vegetation or proposed projects that seek to reduce risk, but simultaneously could have an impact on the environment or certain species or sensitive areas. They have some stringent criteria that you have to meet in order to initiate those projects. And oftentimes just with oversight, a lot of forethought and planning and discussion about discussion and or identification about specifically what the mitigation measures will be in certain areas. And so if there is something that is in direct opposition to what a project has proposed or is planned, chances are that project's going to be put on hold or scaled down until such time that they can meet those CEQA requirements. And so, again, I don't know the specific situation that you're referring to involving the streams and the salmon, but you know, the great thing about it is even if it's an adjoining creek or some area where there's a lot of vegetation, you have a stream or a creek, you can probably still do a lot of work adjacent to those areas that don't contain sensitive species or sensitive or endangered species either.
Right.
And so it can be done, but it has to be done with a lot of thought and a lot of intent and the approval that's sought. And so I do know Ann Krelock, as an example from the MWPA, is heavily responsible for ensuring that all the project language is aligned with CEQA requirements and ensures that those projects move forward in consideration of those requirements, or they will not move forward until those requirements are met so that there's no violations of EPA or CEQA requirements. So this could be something that plays out over a course of time, or it might be something that's resolved fairly quickly, depending on who's giving attention to those requirements and avoiding any unintended impacts.
Okay, I'll send you a copy.
Thank you.
Changing subjects, but again, something that raises a question. You may all have read last week that Canada was hit with a massive cellular failure nationwide, and it dropped 911 service. It dropped any emergency relays that they had for quite a while. We're living in a time where we automatically depend on, I'll just put it on my cell phone. Let's put it out there online. Everybody will read it. There was no online, there was no cell phone. Everything was in the tank. So what do we have in old school that backs up how we get the word out when basically the only thing left is yell out the window. Go ahead.
A couple of the old standbys that have been proven over time to be very reliable include radio. That's, you know, certainly the broadcasting networks don't intend to be, or don't normally, or aren't normally impacted unless they're directly in the line of path of an incident. The others that you have to consider is the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration and their radios. If you have received one of those, I know they were being issued last year from FireSafe Marin on a limited basis to different individuals to ensure that they had access to content and information. The problem is most people aren't going to leave those radios on day in, day out, because you
Right.
don't want to hear all of that air traffic or radio traffic after hours when you're asleep. And that's when most people really are vulnerable, and not, you know, missing that information could be huge. So those are two areas right away. Some of the other redundancies that they're looking to put in place are not for the community so much as they are for first responders. And this goes back probably at least 10 years ago, where I was involved in something involving FirstNet, First Responder Network, and the ability to ensure that first responders had access to voice, data, telephone, internet, and other means of transmitting content amongst one another in the event of a severe catastrophe. And so that FirstNet was put out to bid to the large cell phone providers such as Verizon, AT&T, and others. And ultimately, AT&T landed on the contract and used a certain spectrum called D block that's supposed to be designated strictly for first responder use. And FirstNet's been trying to roll out through AT&T across the country, but it's slow going. Not everyone's adopting rather the cell phones and or the service, so that they have that unimpeded access in the event there's a crisis. Because if you can imagine right now, most folks and most providers, including our department, is using a service that's not generated by FirstNet. And if something were to happen, the commercial use would be overwhelmed with all the private users. And so now we are in a situation where we may not have access. That's why the D block was so critical to be able to roll out properly and get all public safety, law, EMS, and fire, and other critical infrastructure on that network, so they'd be able to communicate despite the overwhelming use of the commercial block. And so first responders are slowly but surely getting access to their information. FirstNet and AT&T have reached out to our staff and our IT personnel, and on a limited basis, I think they're looking to roll it out so far. But countywide, we haven't adopted it, and or region-wide, it hasn't been adopted. It's really slow going. So not sure what kind of pressure the federal government's going to put on AT&T to do a better job of this, but it has to be a more concerted effort, because this has been something that's been going on for quite some time now.
Yeah. All right. It's curious. One last thing, again, totally different subject. Another article in the newspaper. US, meaning all of us, is testing a new fire retardant for the bombers, critical push and other methods as well. So that sent me personally online just to see what was going on out there. And I stumbled upon an article that came out April of this year, and it's called "Fighting Fire with Soda Water." Have you heard anything about that?
I know that we historically had some soda-based extinguishers many years ago.
Okay,
And
no, this
Commissioner Luckham could speak to that, but I'm not familiar with that current soda
well,
water.
I can't
concept.
speak to it other than what they're sort of throwing out here is they've developed recently a mix of soda with water, and once sprayed then on a fire, the soda creates CO2, takes the oxygen away, and the fire goes down more rapidly than with water alone. And so, it's like, really? Right in front of us? And
Well, that sounds like a great concept, almost like aqueous film forming foam, AFFF, where it suppresses the vapors or excludes the fire triangle from being effective. But the one concern I have is anything that takes away oxygen could
well, yeah,
also pose a threat to those individuals using it. And
Sure.
so
got
that's,
you there.
yeah, that's one of the concerns.
All right. Okay. I'll send you some of the material. And that's all
Thank
for
you.
me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stan. Getting back to one of the issues that you brought up in terms of communication in the event of a massive outage of cellular service and what have you. There are literally nationwide networks of ham radio operators, some on 2-meter and some on other frequencies that anytime there's an outage, self-mobilize and establish links to one another and reach out to the community. It's part of, well, at least back in the days when San Rafael first started to adopt the CERT program, the Community Emergency Response Teams, which is an ongoing thing. And if you don't know about it, shoot me an email or what have you, and I'll be happy to link you up with it. Was started in San Rafael by Division Chief Brian Waterbury, who took the CERT program, expanded it. We called it, I was on the organizing and what have you. We called it the DART program because that allowed us a nice logo that, anyway, the emergency ham operators were part of that to establish communication between the CERT teams and what have you. And as far as I know, still operative in the community. So, and the soda water thing, I have read various articles about miracle compounds that can be added to water that put fire out. All of our apparatus, you may have heard in newspaper articles and what have you, referral to foam being used on fires. And there are a number of different types, but one of the characteristics of one of the ones that is most prominent is that it's a surfactant. And in fact, surfactants are chemicals that reduce the surface cohesion of different things like water and what have you. The example of a surfactant that you have in your home and use every day is detergent. Detergent is a pure surfactant. It separates dirt from a substrate, whatever it is, whether it's dishes or clothes. And we use something similar to that as one of the foam additives on our apparatus. So moving on to that, from that, my project over the last month, some of you know that I was active in some prescribed fire training programs up in Northern California for a number of years. It's a local division of a national program, training folks from fire agencies, from the National Park Service, from Forest Service, et cetera, on how to run a prescribed fire operation. These classes involved 30 trainees, and everybody was asked to bring from their local agency all the gear that they would need, including personal protective equipment, shelters, fire shelters, and radios. The one thing we were always short of was radios. And the radios that are used on wildland fires are of a type that is really a national standard. The radios are made by Bendix King, so they're referred to as BK radios. They're high band VHF. And as some of you also probably know, Marin County, the Marin County Emergency Radio Association is in the process of rolling out a new generation of public safety radios for police and fire. The fire agencies all got together, applied for and received a grant from the federal government that allowed us to upgrade the portable radios and the rig-mounted radios to 3-band and tri-band instead of the dual band. And the idea was that it could replace our BK radios, which is a really great idea because in wildland fires in the county in years gone by, firefighters were actually carrying 2 radios in addition to all the other gear they carry out in the field. With our new Mira tri-band radios for local fires, they only need to carry that one Mira radio. Problem is that when they go out of county, the Mira radios are not going to work. So we've had to retain some of our BK radios, but I asked the chief if there was a possibility that we would have some older, some cases more or less scrap BK radios, and the department was able to come up with 9 mostly non-functional BK radios. This is what they look like. And they're heavy and what have you. But I spent a week or two going through all of them, replacing parts, and those are now getting about ready to be shipped up north to the training program to give them another handful of radios, which is a real good thing. So
Can I just say thank you for your efforts there, because I know how valuable radio communications are, and those radios themselves are very expensive. And so for you to take the time and put the effort into making sure that they had something functional, it really makes a difference for their training and or actual use. So that's certainly commendable. And thank you so much for your efforts with that.
well, thanks for the thanks. I have a good time doing it, and I made a lot of friends and got a lot of really great experience myself on wildland fires. I was up there doing documentation, as I have done for the department here for many years. But you know, as a participant out in the field, when there was an opportunity to grab a drip torch and run some fire lines, I took advantage of it. Anyway, I was just helping out another fire service group is always on my list. The other thing, and I just released to everybody in email. So if you just had an email from me pop up, one of the things the only thing it contains is a photograph, and the photograph is of the fire hydrant right in front of my house. One thing that is unique about Marin County is that, unlike most jurisdictions where the water department also owns and maintains the fire hydrants, that's not the case in Marin County. Marin County, we own the fire hydrants, and we, the fire department, are responsible for the maintenance. And at various times in the past, it used to be a policy that when the engine companies had a little downtime, one of the things they would do was to make the rounds and service the hydrants in their district. Servicing really consists mostly of inspection, removing the caps, making sure the gaskets are in place, making sure that the caps and the threads on the hydrant are greased so that when they need to get the cap off in a hurry, it comes off in a hurry, and then painting. So many years ago, I took it on myself to maintain my hydrant. So It's bright yellow, and I got to stop over at 52 and pick up a 2.5-inch gasket because one of them fell apart. So the one thing I don't do, by the way, Chief, part of the routine in the past was always to operate the valves and lubricate them. We don't do that anymore because of the water shortage issue. So be assured that I did not do that.
Well,
However,
we appreciate your help there. One of the concerns you just brought forward is something we've been discussing at the chief's level and have some frustration with the MMWD, knowing full well that we've got similar challenges throughout the entire county right now with our hydrants, with blue dots and other things. Not
yes,
sure why it is that they're not really willing to engage to the degree that we'd like them to. But to your point, historically, agencies have had some direct responsibility for at least checking hydrants, doing a hydrant flush, making sure there's no rocks or other sediment that could go into the pumps on the engine. And, overall, just making sure it's functional, not, strip spindles and other, situations that could impact their ability to safely obtain water quickly and when necessary. But each jurisdiction is different. And, the maintenance for the hydrant, the maintenance for the area surrounding a hydrant, like if you're on a hillside, sometimes those things involve public works as an example, not just the water district or the fire department. So this is a situation that's going to have a lot of conversation in the very near future, because I think the fire chiefs all collectively agree there's got to be a collaborative approach to assist us with the dynamics that we're facing right now with the water hydrant system in the county. So you'll be hearing more about this in some of my future reports as things progress.
well, that's good to hear. I was contemplating whether I should make it a project to tackle some of the other hydrants in the neighborhood. And
But the only
I
thing
could
I would
actually
be
tired.
I would be cautious of is
But
the only thing I would be cautious of is certain hydrants have certain capacities and flow rates. And so we want to be sure that, for instance, if the hydrant should be a red hydrant versus a white hydrant versus a private hydrant that would maybe colored green, that we're
Right.
not putting the wrong colors on either the caps or the hydrants themselves. So now you confuse the engineer who
Right.
shows up expecting to get in a certain PSI and or gallonage. So
Right.
it's a hydrant seems like just a hydrant, but there's so much more to hydrants than people realize. So
And we probably have 5 or 6, maybe more different types of hydrants in San Rafael. And as you point out, different capacities and what have you. So absolutely. Okay, that's really all I've got. I'm just rambling otherwise, so I'm going to turn it over to the chief.
All right. Well, I'll try to do what I can to keep this as succinct as I can. But first and foremost, it's a pleasure to be with you all. I wanted to share that the MWPA Board of Directors recently approved Executive Director Mark Brown and the executive staff's pursuit and acquisition of office space and meeting space. And so that being said, I believe they're going to be locating somewhere near the Commons over on Los Gamos, so that there's, for all the different 50+ Brown Act meetings and the various meetings that the individuals who work on as part of that executive board are required to have, they need a consistent location where they could meet at, and everyone's, going to a similar location with adequate parking, such and such, such and such. And so I checked in on the pricing, and that was my question is, I think the cost annually is going to be about $125,000 a year. And so I just wanted to know what kind of space were they receiving for that significant 6-figure expense for rent. And from what I understand, the rental price is apparently below market. And so with that, I believe the board of directors approved their ability to acquire that needed space. And so moving forward, you'll see, instead of things going from different place to different place with 17 different boards of directors and or so many different meetings, there's going to be some now consistency on where people can congregate and conduct business. So that's certainly news with right now with the MWPA. COVID, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but aside from the interesting stats regarding the Army National Guard, which roughly out of 330,000 troops. 40,000 have refused to be, or excuse me, 40,000 have failed to be vaccinated as of June 30th, and that was going to be cause for release from the federal government. And you compare that with the Army, which allegedly has 99% of the forces vaccinated versus just 1% who is not. You're looking at a substantial number of individuals who will be not protecting us from a National Guard standpoint if they had failed to actually meet the deadline as directed. And so from what I understand, 7,000 of those 40,000 has sought exemptions. I don't know where they're going to land on the approval of either religious or medical exemptions, but I'm going to continue to try to follow that story and maybe provide additional information moving forward. It's also interesting to note, though, that mostly all of the states actually have a lower vaccination rate than either the Army and or the National Guard. So we're not doing as good a job as our first responders, or not our first responders, excuse me, our military counterparts are doing. So, I wish we would emulate them as first responders, to be quite honest with you, but that's a whole nother story. The FDA, at the time I generated the report, had authorized the use of emergency vaccination for children ages 6 months to 5 years. And there was a concern that started emanating from a lot of the parents who were worried that somehow or another, the use of the vaccine would contribute to myocarditis with the children. And from what I understand, it's actually just the opposite. The vaccinations are designed to actually prevent myocarditis in probably nearly every case, or the great percentage of cases. If you were to actually be infected with COVID, there's a better likelihood that you would actually become affected with myocarditis, as opposed to the vaccine creating that issue for you. So more is on the horizon in the way of different types of vaccines that are being developed and now taking into account the subvariants and the variants, as opposed to what we've seen with the focus initially on the original Delta and some of the other first to surface more deadly and infectious variants. And so we're going to see more as this progresses, because as everyone knows, the variants continue to evolve and evade the vaccine that was originally protecting individuals. And so I just wonder, somewhere down the road, will it be a booster or will it be an annual shot, just like the flu shot would be? That's now, something that you just take once on an annual basis to address any form of COVID that could surface. So more to come on that. Well over a month ago, the department responded to a fire in the Deer Park, Highland Park area, and Highland Ave and Deer Park Ave areas. And so it's a fire that's really a suspicious fire because of the time of the evening where it occurred. And it's also an area where there's been vagrant activity. And I know this because I had received emails from concerned community members who live in the area and have witnessed youth and or vagrant activity in the area where it shouldn't be. And so given that, our first responding crews that arrived on scene were met with roughly 50-foot flame lengths. And if you look at the photo that I submitted in the report, you'll see why. There's a big tall row of eucalyptus trees that were in that little drainage area there where the fire took place and started moving quickly uphill. The first company officer on scene did an excellent job of ensuring that they had sufficient resources, also ensuring that San Rafael PD went up top to help initiate some initial evacuation of about 5 or 6 structures that were directly in the path of that fire. We put units in there to do structure protection. So I got to say that the initial actions on the first due company officer helped make the difference. They flanked the fire pretty quickly, got ahead of it. There was one harrowing thing as I was en route to the incident that actually occurred and was a cause for concern. And that was a rolling ember had rolled downhill that was burning and started igniting under someone's porch. And they called it in. It was communicated by radio. The great thing that I didn't know at the time, though, was that homeowner had actually done an excellent job of clearing out any underbrush and making sure that his vegetation was almost down to the soil. So that rolling ember, it started, but it didn't really go anywhere. And our crews got there and were able to stop any damage to the deck, the outcroppings, or the structure itself. But it was really because of that homeowner's efforts that things didn't take off and become a lot worse, a lot faster. So, but those are the things you're always concerned about when you have a hillside incident. Embers do roll downhill and create new issues below firefighters oftentimes, and that's a problem. So side of that, very good outcome. No one was injured. No property was damaged, but just, got everyone's attention. Again, another incident. And thankfully, there was not a lot of high wind that evening. Otherwise, things might have been a little different than what I'm describing now. Crew from the Fireboat San Rafael saves a windsurfer. I guess every so often we get windsurfers who decide that they're going to defy all of the advice and all of the understanding that others who've got more experience or, see things that they're not paying attention to. For whatever reason, they're determined and want to get out and enjoy the water. And I can appreciate that, except I've got an issue with sharks, so I don't want to appreciate it that much. That being said, one of the surfers got out there and he encountered some strong gusty winds, and he lost his sail and started getting swept out under the Richmond Bay Bridge, the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. And so with that, our crews were able to go out, and the folks at the Marin Rod and Gun Club actually spotted them and called 911, but our crews were able to get out there and do what they could to assist that individual and bring him back to shore. So it was pretty choppy water from what I understand, and the firefighters were good enough to really do everything they could to warm him up as quickly as they could. I'm assuming he had a wetsuit, but I don't know for sure, because if they're using towels and blankets, he must have been really affected by the cold. So he may not have even had a wetsuit on. So, but that being said, he was taken to the shore, medically evaluated, and I believe he was treated and released on scene. So no negative outcome there. And I think we had a similar call yesterday, actually. So just one of those things. Fire Station 54 and 55 renovations. The photos that I've shown you now, they're certainly dated. I was by Station 55 yesterday, and I got to tell you, the windows are going up on that building. You don't even see them in this photo, but there's windows going up on the building, and everything's taking form relatively quickly. And in talking to Fabi Guyan, she indicated that we're on track, if not ahead, to actually kind of wrap things up, hopefully by the end of the year. So I know the crews are chomping at the bit to get into their new location and enjoy it. In the meantime, though, the work continues. So I'll have more updated photos for you with next month's report. We had a few promotional ceremonies. Friday, June 17th, we promoted a couple of captains and engineer. Those individuals were Gabe Williams and Jacob Santos were promoted to fire captain. And we had Braden Burris, who was actually promoted a few weeks earlier, join in on the celebration and formally acknowledge his promotion to engineer. I got to tell you, and one other individual, our firefighter paramedic Everett Taylor, completed his probation successfully. We also have another individual who completed probation successfully just recently, and that would be Kyle Garcia. We had to extend his probation by a few weeks because he had used some leave, and accordingly we had to extend probation accordingly based on that leave use. But he's done very well. Equally important was we actually on June 27th, some of you were in attendance. We brought on board Abraham Roman, former fire chief with the city of Berkeley, who's joined us to serve as our deputy chief of operations, and he's hit the ground running. I was in Hawaii last week with my son, week before last. And Abe, and Chief Sennett held down the fort while I was gone. But Abe's getting up to speed pretty quickly on all things operations within San Rafael, Marinwood, and/or Marin County in general. So he's already met with the ops section chief. He's already been out riding along with the BCs to try to get a sense of who they are and what they're required to do in the event he has to spell some of them or one of them or more of them for any period of time out in the field. And so he and I have also talked about some of our priorities. We're going to certainly have some more conversations about additional priorities, but one of those I'm going to be bringing to the Fire Foundation involving my interest in trying to get a girls' camp established by next spring. And so he's already made some initial contacts with Chief Tyler's staff and some of our women in the organization to see what we can do to mobilize an internal effort and then eventually build something where it's going to really be San Rafael, Novato, and/or county centric, so that we can utilize the talent of the individuals we have within to bring about a girls' camp, not unlike what you're hearing about or seeing in other agencies or in other counties. I saw something on the news recently. CAL FIRE had a camp. There's stuff in Sacramento. There's stuff in the South Bay. Berkeley had a camp at one point, and we're looking to do our own thing so we can start building a better rapport with the youngsters to help them see public safety as a future option of employment, and certainly within the San Rafael Fire Department. So more to follow on that, but I just wanted to let you know, Abe is here now after 23 years with the city of Berkeley, and with numerous individuals who reached out to let me know that they were familiar with Abe and appreciated the working experience they've had interacting with him over the course of their careers. And so although I worked right next door to Abe when I was in Oakland, we kind of came up at different periods, and I was assigned to different things, and we saw each other from afar and interacted just on a couple of occasions, but I didn't really get a sense of who Abe was. And I'm quite sure he probably felt the same way about me, but we're going to get very familiar with one another moving forward. So thank you all for attending that as well. The ceremony was held outdoors at the Public Safety Center, and I think it was something that was well attended and well received. And then last but not least, that same day, we honored another couple of individuals that day, several more who couldn't make it because they had already had other travel arrangements and things of that nature. But Dan Rotwein was promoted to engineer. He actually completed his 1 year probationary period as an engineer, as did Kyle Garcia, who's pictured there, and Captain Jimmy Alvarez in a photo with his daughter. Each of these individuals is, without a doubt, doing an exceptional job in the roles and ranks and responsibilities that they have. And I want to add to that, I just conducted interviews yesterday for the sole vacancy we had for fire engineer. We had 8 individuals who completed the testing process. They all scored almost in the 90 percentile plus. And I interviewed 3 of them for one position, and I got to say I was impressed with all 3. But we had one standout candidate, and that individual was offered the opportunity yesterday, and he will start as a fire engineer next Tuesday, and that's Colton Bill. So there'll be more on that to follow next month, but I just wanted to state that a lot's going on in the department, but we certainly appreciate the ongoing support, and if there's any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Just one comment, and Berkeley had an excellent Fire Academy weekend. This was several years ago. They called the program Ignite, and it was opened up to, I think there were about 20 participants, all women, all athletes, and I was there for the whole weekend. They got to do everything. They climbed the ladder to the fire tower. They operated chainsaws. They did hose lays. They did a lot of stuff, and was a very impressive program, and a very impressive group of potential firefighters. So that would be great to have a program like that in Marin County, or even a cadet program for the younger folks. An excellent idea. So
we've actually been discussing both, so that's on the
Yeah.
horizon. There's so many other things that the younger ladies can be exposed to, whether it be power tools and equipment, vehicle extrication, hose lays, you name it. There's a host of things that we want to, or I know I want to expose them to, because I've seen girls camps in the South Bay, Fremont, Santa Clara. Last October, when we had our flooding event, I went to Sacramento during those heavy rains, and they moved everything indoors there, and they just operated it seamlessly. Very impressive operation there. And so I've got some great ideas on what we can do, but we'll probably end up using, if possible, the Novato facility, because it's going to be able to actually accommodate more people and more evolutions there. So I
yeah,
certainly want to invite all of you to come and join and see what's being done once we get those dates finalized and everything put in motion.
yeah. Berkeley has I think it's a 3-story tower that they use for training, and they put their aerial rig up. And I mean, I don't know how many of you who have been up an aerial rig 75 feet in the air and what have you. It's not for the faint of heart. Well, I just watched those ladies just scramble up there with no reservation at all. And I'll tell you, when I've done it, I had some reservations. So anyway, okay. Anybody have anything else they want to add? There being nothing else, I'm going to adjourn at 5 p.m. Thank you all for
Thank you
participating.
all. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.